So a quick introduction to myself and our business and what we do. So my name's Mike Winstone, and I operate a boutique design firm in Muskoka, Ontario. Winstone Design is my business. I'm the sole employee of that business. And I think it's important to note that strictly just because I want to stress that the level of detail produced by tools such as ArchiCAD and ArchiFrame are together completely possible and efficient to be managed on your own. And integrating this into a bigger firm is definitely easy to integrate. Um, I've been operating my business since 2020, previously as a dedicated Revit user. But as of 2023, so for the last 2 years now, I've been fully using ArchiCAD. So it was definitely a stressful switch. I can kind of talk a little bit about sort of the benefits that I see with ArchiCAD. But then along with that came ArchiFrame, and its integration has completely transformed the way that I do documentation. This is just a simple 22-foot by 22-foot garage that was done for some customers local to me here. They're actually friends of mine, but just sort of to see the level of detail that gets put into this. So this is sort of the generic 3D model that most people would see, but then just simply by creating a layer property, we can take that model and turn that model into um, a complete wood frame structure with individual components for lintels, trusses, outlooker framing, sub fascias, nailers for soffit. Again, it's very simple. It's very straightforward and easy to use. I won't do much examples, but just to kind of show you the power and level of detail within this, um, you know, all of this is automatically generated. And in terms of scale and time, this entire building was probably framed out in under an hour for trusses, wall framing, and everything. And this entire project was probably completed start to finish from concept to final documentation in about 32 hours. Um, so it's a really efficient process once you get sort of the parameters set up. And the people at ArchiFrame have been really fantastic in terms of catering and tailoring the parameters that I want to see on the plans, which has been fantastic. This is that Bunkie project that kind of showed a little bit of detail on previously as well in that slideshow. So again, it looks relatively simple and basic from a high level perspective. But again, if we drive into 3D framing aspect, there's a lot more going on that sometimes is difficult to convey in a 2D detail or element. So integrating steel headers and steel columns, again, these are all done with ArchiFrame components. So I'll kind of show in a little bit in the other project how it's really an advantage to use an ArchiFrame beam versus an ArchiCAD beam in terms of documentation. But the ability to frame out these walls, show the lintels, see how the rear concrete walls actually interact, and we can frame the rake walls on top and build the lintels into those components, I think is really powerful. But even something where we're doing an unconventional roof framing structure, I have a TJI roof rafter in an unconventional direction with a sistered on 2x10 beside it. So the ability to sort of have this in the 3D model and share it with the contractor through BIMX and walk them through this so they can see it saves me time in the documentation side as opposed to needing to do three different details to show this one element. So again, relatively complicated build in terms of trying to integrate trusses and rafters and wall framing. There's a lot of elements in this building too that require tall wall framing on the backside. So we're using something like a Weyerhaeuser LSL stud, if you guys are familiar with that. But again, to sort of drive down the individual elements and components, I've been able to separate these out for foundation plans. And again, all of my pad footings and strip footings, I've been able to convert to an ArchiFrame element, which allows me to then show them in the schedules as I showed before. But I'm able to then highlight out the foundation plan, the beams and columns just as themselves to sort of visualize where just the structural components are in this building, and then detail out in high detail the wall framing. So as an example, I mean, this project is relatively complex. I was able to frame out this entire building, walls, rafters, trusses, and foundation in about I have to go back and add it up, but probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 to 13 hours, which sounds like a lot, but to provide the detail where I don't need to 2D detail any element on a drawing, I think it's a huge advantage. And just the ability to share this information and how it interacts with the building to get it across, I think is hugely powerful. I mean, we're showing TJI floor joists. One of the elements that we needed to kind of share in this particular project was how we set up the beams. We wanted everything to be flushed into the building, so we went with a steel beam header in here, and we can kind of see here how there's a big drop from the underside of the steel beam to the 16-inch I-joist, floor joists, and that's primarily so that we can get plumbing and HVAC and mechanical structures underneath without needing to cut joists or to drop bulkheads in this building. So again, to be able to share this level of information with the client is hugely powerful. Further to that, this model being exported then to BIMX, this is where I think it's truly powerful from a contractor perspective, because that level of documentation is then exported out. So again, all those 3D models and elements are put into this same ArchiFrame element. We can kind of see how this building is getting built, how everything is interacting with each other. But what I find truly powerful in terms of being able to utilize this with schedules is if I go to a structural plan and I wanted to go to a footing plan, for example, because I've been able to hyperlink the tag properly the footings or the beams or columns, everything now appropriately shows up in a schedule. So for example, here in the strip footing schedule, I'm able to show a footing schedule. That footing schedule has a width, a depth, it has a tag, it has the construction elements for that specific footing. But if I wanted to then click on that element, I can now actually select that element in BIMX, which then takes me directly to that element in 3D, so I can see where that element is in order to find it. Same thing for beams and columns. If I go to the beam and column page, in here, I'm able to then either click on a section view, or I can go to my beam schedule, which we can see here. And if I want to know where B8 is in that specific model, I can open that and it automatically takes me to where beam 8 is. So if I'm able to, if I'm having difficulty finding it in a plan view, I can easily take it to there. And then same thing, because all these elements are in 3D, I can grab a section view of this building and I can open section in 2D, or I can open it in 3D if you're familiar with anything like that, but I can take it like that, or open that section in 2D, and now it actually brings it through. So I can see in real space where that section's being taken through, and since all these elements are brought in via ArchiFrame's 3D version, all of this is now an element of the structure. So I don't need to add the 2D Xbox symbol for wall framing top plates. I don't need to add in an I-joist 2D element and then array that across at 16 inches. It's implemented in here directly right away. So that's sort of high level in terms of how it interacts with BIMX. And then working closely with ArchiFrame, the output for wall framing, for example, as Tom sort of alluded to, the documentation is automatically generated from the ArchiFrame wall element tool. So it gives you cut lists, it gives you beam locations, it tags everything with dimensions, it gives you squared off dimensions here, it gives you cut lists even for paneling. So in terms of ease, in that 12 to 13 hours that it took me to frame out that building, it now automatically generates the, if I go back to here, for example, it automatically generates the wall framing layers. So if I go into main level framing, as soon as I draw that wall framing element, it shows all those elements in 2D. It automatically creates the 2D drawing of that individual wall element. It gives cut lists, and this very simply, by being able to select that option and going into here, I can CNC printing and layouts, and it automatically creates all of those drawings on a sheet size of my selection that I wanted to in my layout book. So for example, all of these are the individual wall elements, automatically created, automatically generated on a specific sheet size. Um, so it's a really powerful tool. The contractors absolutely love it. It's just a secondary check from everybody's perspective.